Everyone, welcome to EDTalks. Want to talk about a really serious topic today, and it's about mental health. And we all have mental health, and this is seasonal affective disorder specifically. And there's a good friend of mine that has shared quite publicly some of the challenges related to, we'll call it SAD, and that's Holly Russell. Holly, welcome to EDTalks.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So, Holly, I think I've known about you longer than I've known you because you went to the same, because I'm good friends with your dad, Bill Russell, and you went to the same university as my oldest son, Biola.
Yes, yeah, I did. Graduated from there in 2010, but I did it all online. But I loved it. I got a degree in biblical studies, which it's one of those things where I don't have a job that uses it, but I love the history, I love spirituality and all of that, so I still use it. I think on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, some of my favorite classes, I went to Colorado State University and I took I had to take some history. And so I took history that was specifically like a biblical studies. I mean, it was only in 2 courses, so it's nothing close to having a degree in it. But it's just fascinating, because it's more than, no matter what your personal belief system might be, the historical aspect of it is like fascinating too. And then leadership and stuff like that, is,
100%.
yeah,
100.
it is so cool. So then I met you because you started working for your dad. Maybe tell us a little bit about your career, because I want to say it's been 5 years, maybe in one with.
Yeah, I've been working for him on and off for about 5 years. I worked for him part-time when I was finishing my degree, but I joke to people that I had no intention of sticking around in health IT, but what happened is I caught the passion. I mean, it just is not only from everybody in healthcare, but from my father, who just has this passion for being a CIO who did it poorly at times. He just has this heart for other CIOs and other leaders in health IT to support them in any way that he can, because he knows how hard of a job it is. And the reality is, at the end of the day, it does affect lives. I mean, we're talking about saving lives through IT, and it just is one of those things where the company also has been really beautiful because I'm allowed to grow in my strengths. So I started working for him doing social media and different things, and now I do production and scheduling and some of the dreaming and whatnot. And so it's totally evolved, not because necessarily just what the company needed, but because it's also where my strengths really fit. So it's just been an awesome journey. And always said, like, oh, I'm just going to do this temporarily. And here I am. And I'm like, it's not temporary. And I have no plan of going anywhere else at this point.
It's awesome. You do an awesome job. The whole This Week Health team is awesome. I leverage. I'm a consumer still today of the content, but especially when I was still a CIO, because your dad's been doing This Week Health or a variation of it for some time. I didn't make it mandatory, but almost mandatory. Like, I heavily influenced my teams to take advantage of all this content. Is so great. And I think I almost see it as a ministry, what you're doing, for the reasons that you cited. So yeah, power on with that. And so you've leveraged your role a bit, because you're obviously pretty well known now because, This Week Health popularity.
Yes.
And you've been very honest and transparent with people about SAD. Can you tell us a little bit, for those people who might not know, can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So my journey with depression and seasonal affectiveness disorder has been, I mean, almost lifelong at this point. I started suffering from depression when I was a teenager, but specifically seasonal affectiveness disorder, I've really been noticing the pattern over the last since COVID, really. COVID just was a special time where it took anything that was kind of under the surface and incubated it. So for me, it came out in really realizing just kind of that pattern that when I see the sun less, I struggle more. It's a really direct correlation. And so it's honestly, it started really in 2021. I actually was committed to the hospital for attempted suicide. That was where I started really pushing into the journey, meeting with, thankfully, I've been in counseling and was in counseling at the time. And literally, my counselor I say to this day that she saved my life, because I went to assess and she asked me, if you leave, are you going to be safe? And I couldn't say yes. And she was the one who got me to the hospital, basically. And I thank her for it. I mean, hardest time of my life, darkest time of my life, but because of that relationship, I am alive today. And so from that, my counselor and I really dug into, after healing a little bit, because when you're in that darkness, that's the hardest part of sad, is when you're in it, it's it's just about waking up. It's just about doing the next best thing, versus when you're in those healthy seasons, it's about doing some of the hard work so that when you're in the unhealthy season, and are a little bit stronger. So now it's been 4 years of me working on it. And I told my counselor about a month ago, I'm like, this is the best depressive episode I've ever had. And that does not mean that it doesn't suck. It does not mean that it has not been all consuming and hard, but because for the past 4 years I've been doing the hard work, I've been sharing with a lot of people, I've been honest and vulnerable. This season, I've been surrounded by people who understand more than ever before. This season, I've also just been like, I know it's better if I don't hide. And
Yeah.
so I've just, even when I don't want to, I've shown up, and I've shown up just how I am.
Yeah.
Taking off that expectation of you gotta show up and be your best self. It's like, no, I'm just gonna show up so I can be here and be with people. It's unfortunately, it's one of those things where it's not oh, I'll just flip this switch and all of a sudden I'm done. I'll start taking this medication and it'll be great. But it's, medication mixed with therapy, mixed with family and friends, mixed with prayer and just a lot of self work. So it's not an easy process. It's a lot of hard work, but I am so grateful for the hard work and just the amount of people that have loved me through it. Because of them, I am surviving. Maybe not thriving, but surviving.
Surviving and adding impact, though, helping save lives. You can't.
Mhm.
So no, just even showing up and doing what you do, even in the most difficult times, you are part of something special. Your mission in your life, and you're helping save lives, as you spoke about at the top. Holly, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is, the reason I said mental health that we all have is like our physical health. And sometimes, because I think sometimes there's this negative stigma about, oh, I have depression or some sort of mental health diagnosis. And I got cancer. There was nothing I did to get me cancer. It's just
Right.
part of your physical health. Unfortunately, because of the fallen world we live in, right? You get sick, and you can't do anything about it. It just happened. It's the same with mental health, but we stigmatized it.
Mhm.
And when people like yourself are so honest and vulnerable and authentic talking about it, I think it helps sort of normalize it for people. It's like, hey, this could happen to anyone. And I know people that aren't as forthcoming as you are about mental health related things, but they tell on a personal level, on a confidential level. I mean, I think people would be surprised just, how many people, have to work through this challenge, like a physical health challenge.
Yeah, and we've come so far with mental health. It's amazing. And COVID really did help with some of that. But the challenge with it is it still has a lot of stigmas around it that make it really hard. There's, one of the questions that it's not triggering to me anymore, but it's still a hard question. People always ask, like, well, what started it? What triggered you? And, sometimes it is circumstantial, and sometimes I had a really hard experience and it definitely made it worse. Or, physical health I was sick and then I was exhausted. And because of that, I felt like I was failing. And so there is that circumstantial piece of it. But for me, I've realized my body then takes the circumstantial stuff and makes it harder, is really what I've realized. And so a lot of people just want to try and figure it out when it comes to mental health. And for a lot of people who are actually struggling and suffering through it, figuring it out is not what they need. What they need is, just like when you have physical ailments, you go to the hospital, the first thing they're going to address are the symptoms and what's happening. And then they're going to try and find the root cause, and then they're going to treat that. And so when someone with mental health disorder says, hey, I'm struggling, you got to start with okay, are you feeding yourself? Okay, are you talking to people? Okay, let's go for a short walk, whatever you can handle. You've got to start with those symptoms and show them that it's okay for them to just be where they're at. Because you don't look at somebody with cancer and say, hey, stop it. Let's figure out the problem and stop it. It's like, yeah, I would love to do that. I really would, but I have to do the steps of, okay, we're going to look at the symptoms, then we're going to find out the root cause, then we're going to get on the treatment, and the treatment still might take a while, and for some people, I forget what doctor I heard, but ADHD and depression have similar things in the brain where there's a lot of doctors now that believe that if you have those two things specifically, there's actually a connection to your brain that's missing compared to other people who don't have it. And so it's not something that you can suddenly grow in your brain.
Right.
And so I wish more people would understand that piece of somebody who's fighting these different mental health things might actually physically be made up different than you. And so for you, it's like, I had a really bad day and then I just did this and I got over it. I have a few people in my life who love me well, but they've never been depressed in their life. And we've had this conversation of just don't get it. And it's okay. You're going to have those people. Thankfully / unfortunately, there's also a lot of people who understand it and walk through it with you. But it's just understanding, even for people who have depression and whatever other mental health issue, that it doesn't mean that you're broken. It doesn't mean that you're more wrong. It doesn't, that stigma continues to carry on of if they just did this, they'd be fine. It's like, it's not that simple for anyone.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's really good insights. And like I said, everyone would be surprised how many people that because of the stigma, right? People don't talk about it openly, are dealing with it. And these are, like yourself, high performers.
Mhm.
And so it's not something that's just relegated to low performers or anything. I mean, again, I could not reveal who these people are that I know, but they're like extremely high performers like yourself, and people would be surprised. So again, to the point I think we're both making, but you make it much better than I do because you can relate to both sides, is that it's something that just happens. It's not something that typically that someone has like done, hey, you just need to stop that. But it's like my cancer. It's like, wow, I wish there had been something, right? But this is really good. I want to pivot to another question that I think you would have some insights into, and that's, how do I, as a leader, help someone on my team who is suffering with SAD or some sort of depression? Because again, I think people will know or may not know that someone is dealing with it, but if they do know, how can they be helpful? So what would a good leader do to be helpful to someone on their team that has this sort of challenge?
Yeah, I think the first thing is giving that person the space, and not that's such a ambiguous term, but part of that as a leader is if they don't tell you but you see the signs, allowing them not to tell you, but also being the person that they can tell. So for me, and my team, now granted, our business is a little bit of a family business, so I definitely benefit from that. And it's part of the reason I am in this job is I have the beauty of being able to call up my father and say, I'm not okay. It's really hard for me right now. I also have the wonderful experience that my parents live in Florida. And so I actually left early for Christmas this year because I was having a hard time. So I'm currently in Florida because the sun shines more down here. It's better for me. It's better for my dogs. So, making those decisions and allowing them that flexibility is one of the big things. The other, my coworker, Megan, she just really helps me with, okay, I'm not going to solve your depression. And recognizing as a leader, that's not your job at all. Your job is, okay, what do we need? For me, the biggest thing that Megan does is she helps me focus on, okay, one, she tells me all the time, she's like, Holly, you've put in the hard work all year long. All right, this is just a season. What do we need to get done in this season so that we can get you? I have a 2-week break over Christmas. Let's rest. Let's rest well. What do you need to do until we get to break so that we finish as strong as we can? It's not going to be my strongest season, but she helps me in this time where my brain literally just doesn't have the capacity to sit back and like, okay, what's the most, that's what we do every day is, okay, what's the most important thing for me to do today? What do I need to do? Whereas with someone with SAD, their capacity is lower. So it's harder for me to look at the 10 emails in my inbox and decide this is the most important right now. And so what Megan does, she comes alongside me and she says, okay, what are the things that we have to get done? Okay, let's look at our priorities. All right, which one is falling through the cracks? Okay, is this one okay to fall through the cracks until January? Yeah. that's fine. You did the hard work in the background. We're going to let that go. We've got a system in place. It'll survive till January. Okay, somebody that's just willing to look at the work with you and say, remind you that you can do the work and that you have done the work and that you're still valuable as a team member, but also helping you to reprioritize of like, all right, you have this much capacity. All right, let's do this. You don't need to do more than this, and giving them that permission to have a season where they're not producing. Because for me, it becomes a lot of that lie of I'm a failure because I'm not producing as much. And it's a lie of isolation. And so having leaders that are willing to just sit down and have the conversation of like, hey, I see that it's a hard season for you, whether it's depression or something else. Okay, what needs to happen so that you can still be successful here at work, but also so that you can be successful at home, so that you can come back to work strong, but also so that you can be strong for your family, so that you can be strong for your friends, strong for your coworkers. Like, we care more about people than we do the job getting done. And
Yeah.
then we'll get the job done if that's the case.
Yeah. No, I love it. Super, super practical. What if I'm listening right now and maybe I've been in denial or just wondering because, wow, I can relate to some of this. And I just wonder, what would your recommendation do? A friend comes up to you and says, geez, Hall, I think I might have, a challenge in this mental health. What are some steps they should take?
The biggest one is counseling. Get in with a counselor. I always am on my current counselor is amazing. I love her so much. And I always swear that if she wasn't a counselor and we didn't have HIPAA and all that stuff, she'd be one of my best friends, which is great. But there's seasons where I go once a month. There's seasons like this where I go once a week. And so getting into counseling, especially when you're in the healthy season where you're like, yeah, I've struggled with that in the past. I'm not struggling with it currently, but I'm a little worried that the shoe might drop, like getting in counseling, having the conversation. And for me, it's always having my counselor on the back burner because there's seasons where I don't need to talk to her as much, and that's totally okay. But then there's seasons where it's like, okay, I need to go in so that I can help her. Because what a counselor really does is their job is to be your advocate 100% of the time. And so for me, my counselor just helps me. I come in and I share, okay, this is what I experienced this week. And then she helps me to reframe it in a way that's true when I might be telling her lies of, I'm failing at work. And she's like, okay, what did you do at work this week? And I got this done. She's like, then you're not failing. Or I usually start the conversation with, I didn't do any work today. She's like, is that true? Well, I did 3 calls and I spent an hour on email. Then you did work today. It's like, yeah, but it's not. It's just, look, you did work today. It's like, okay, yes, I did work today. I only worked for 4 hours, which is not my best, but I did work today. And so it's that having that person is so important when the lies are just constant. But also for that person who is just unsure and afraid to talk to somebody about it, my biggest encouragement, especially if you can't afford counseling, because for me, I have so many friends who they just can't afford counseling. My best piece of advice is tell someone.
Yeah.
Whoever your safest person is, that somebody from your circle, a coworker, somebody that you feel safe talking to about it. Because when we're in those seasons, the lies become really loud. And especially isolation is where the lies just build on top of each other. And it's really hard to hear any truth.
Yeah.
So telling someone who you know will tell you the truth is just so important, and who sees you and your value.
Yeah.
Because I now have a circle of people around me that they're able to say, you are not your depression. You are not seasonal affectiveness disorder. See how hard you work during the year. This season is not what defined you. It just is fighting lies with truth.
Yeah. Yeah. I really heard you say 4 different things. And that the first is talk to someone, find a trusted person, a friend, family member, and just tell them. That's a major step. Get a counselor. And I've heard people say, and I practice this through seasons of my life, you get a counselor, not just when you have an issue, but you should, because it's just good health maintenance, like working out, like people have a trainer. That's all it is. I mean, so you should do it. The third is build the base. I mean, that's the words I use, from my athletic training. But
Yes.
build the base. No matter if you're in race season or not in a race season or doing really well physically or unwell, you build the base because you're going to have to rely on that base when things get rough.
Mhm.
You don't have that base, then it's going to get rougher. And just generally, it's a proactiveness, the counselor. Yeah. So those are like 3 or 4 really, really super practical things. And then you also shared with us like how to be a good leader. Like if you have someone who's dealing with these issues, like how to help them and reach out and give them the space that they need and just help them in that environment. So lastly, I'm going to switch a little bit on you. So you mentioned your dogs. Tell us about your dogs, because I think I've met one of them, right?
Yes. So I have 2 dogs. One is Captain and the other is Thor. So both of them are Labradoodles. One is a chocolate Labradoodle, one is a black Labradoodle. But Captain is special because he's actually my service animal. So he travels everywhere with me. He is trained specifically for panic attacks, but there's so much more to it. So he does deep pressure therapy, but in the end of the day, I have used him for a panic attack probably about 4 times in the last 4 years. But really, it's just the general well-being. I think Captain actually was a result of me being hospitalized. I had a friend say, Holly, afterwards, she said, Holly, I think a dog would be a really good thing for your mental health. And he really was. I mean, we call him a gift from God in our family because I was able to heal because I was able to care for him.
Yeah.
There's something to it. But there's this piece of he's part of my base, as you said. Like, he was what got me out of bed. I didn't want to get out of bed to take care of myself, but I had a puppy that I wanted to get out of bed and take care of.
Yeah.
And so there's this piece of, for me in these depressive episodes, I am willing to care for others much more than I'm willing to care for myself, which is part of the problem. But I kind of leaned into that as part of my strength of, I know I'm going to want to take care of this dog more than I want to take care of myself. And so those rhythms and routines are good for me. I got to take him for a walk. I
Yeah.
got to get up and feed him. I got to, and so it's those things that help me when I don't want to get out of bed to get out of bed.
Yeah.
But also, I do struggle with anxiety in these seasons, especially around large crowds, which you've been to HIMSS, you've been to the definition of a large crowd. And so he just kind of helps me to keep an even balance around that. And just, I feel a little bit more calm. Also, I always know that people are going to walk up to me and want to talk about the dog first, which I'm so confident talking about my dog. I could talk about my dog for hours. And so starting the conversation off with, oh yeah, this is Captain. He's my service dog. He's very friendly. Yes, you can pet him. Oh, what do you do in health IT? And then we start the conversation that way. And I don't start with feeling like I'm a failure. I'm an imposter. I shouldn't be here. But we start off on this even keel of, oh, I'm a dog lover too. Let me show you a picture of my dog. It eases some of that anxiety for me in a way that I never thought when I got him as a service dog that would be what he does. But he's great. He's also just a giant puddle.
He's yeah, Captain is awesome. And yeah, I would never know. So Holly, until you shared, I would have known, right? So Captain is, you have a good partnership there with Captain. But like I said, I would never know. But Captain also, and yourself, also help raise a lot of funds for Alex's lemonade stand. And so I'll definitely drop in the link in the comments how people can give, because I know you guys also do something with the yellow hat. So with the yellow hat.
Yeah. So this year we raised, our goal was 100,000 and we blew it out of the water. Next year our goal is 200,000. But yeah, so anybody who gives $500 or more, we give them a yellow hat and they become a part of our yellow club. So, and it's really great. Actually, this year we're doing a golf tournament for Alex's Lemonade Stand the Sunday before HIMSS. So we're starting to do registration for that. So for any golf lovers who are going to HIMSS, please come join us. We're going to do anything we can just to raise money for these kids. Alex's Lemonade Stand is an amazing foundation. And Bill likes to say that Alex is the picture of a good female leader. She had vision, she had a mission, and she just loved others. I mean, until the day she died, she was just worried about helping other kids with cancer. And so it's really beautiful. And their company I mean, every dollar that can goes towards the research and the families. Even Liz, who is Alex's mother, like my father was interviewing her and she had to pause and answer the phones. Like they don't
Yeah.
mess around. Their heart is really for these kids. And so it's just been an honor to partner with them.
So cool. Right after this recording, I will be dropping my $500 and wearing my yellow cap. Also, send me the link for the golf tournament so I can post that as well. Encourage people to go. And I just want to say how much I appreciate you, Holly. I've always liked you, but then as I learned even more, my love for you grew. You're a beautiful woman. You're so caring, and you're doing so much to help so many in the healthcare tech. So many people ultimately save lives. What you're doing, and I know some of it now is behind the scenes, but that's as backstage is as important or more important than front stage, as you know. And so what you do matters. And I'm thankful I could call you friend. I love your dad too, uh, but you've got a captain, so it's all
Yeah, I have to weed out somehow. Yeah, well, Ed, I appreciate you. Honestly, I feel kind of honored to be considered your friend because when I first started in health IT, you were one of the celebrities of health IT. So I'm like, oh, I know Ed Marks.
yeah.
Love
Uh,
it.
it's all good. We're all family in many different ways. So thanks again for sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you.